There we go. We're recording. So again, welcome everybody. Let's just go ahead and dive right in, shall we? Okay, so expect the extraordinary, right? So I'm sure you've probably had this conversation with your guide, and if you haven't already, maybe you've been doing your own research or we'll be hearing about it at the conference. But we'll talk during conferences, guides talk to you about what's happening right now with your child and where they are moving toward. What are the lessons that are coming up for them and kind of what the trajectory is going forward with your own child. So that's some of the things that you can expect to hear at a conference. If you've been at a conference before, you probably know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, that's some of the things that you can expect to hear and be able to give feedback to about what you see too, because we're partners. So we want to hear from you as well, right? So when we're thinking about that third year, right, when we first have our child join a Montessori school when they're 2.5 or when they're 3, or maybe when they're toddlers, we may not be thinking that kindergarten age is right around the corner. And we may not be thinking about, oh, that's right. What am I going to do? I have a lot of options, right? I could go into public school. I could go to a different school. I could stay here at TPMS. What do I want to do? So our goal tonight is to talk about what you can expect during that third year and what extraordinary things happen in that kindergarten year. So here we go. We're going to move into the different benefits and kind of go through some of those so you can get an idea of what you can look for. And if you could see on the screen, we've captured some photographs of what you could see in primary classroom, and there are a couple photographs from our elementary classroom. So you'll see in that first one up in the corner, Kiangozi is working with the bells. There are children right behind him working together, it looks like. And right behind him, you see a child connecting with an adult. I'm not sure if they're getting polished or if they're getting something, but they're somehow connecting with the adults in the environment to see what is next. What am I doing? What work do I have out? Do I have all the materials that I have? Oh, I need polish. So they'll go to the adult and get the help they need when they need it, right? Otherwise, their sense of independence is flourishing. You probably see this at home a lot. I can do it myself. I'm going to put on my coat my own self. I'm going to pick on my own outfit. I want to pour the dressing on the salad, right? You'll see that a lot. And as that grows and grows, you'll see that, we see that in the classroom where the work that they choose grows and grows and grows. So you'll see in the middle that long bead chain. So that's some big work. 3 children came together and worked hard together as a group, right? You'll see another one where an older child in the primary classroom is helping a younger child. So that's one of the things I want to pinpoint, is that something that we see in that third year, in that capstone year in a primary program. The elders of the classroom kind of rise up a little bit, a lot actually, and become the people that the younger children go to for help or for, can you show me this? Can you give me this? Can you help me tie my apron, right? And down below, you'll see the child in concentration with the materials there, the geometric solids, and look at that concentration on that child's face. That's something that in a Montessori classroom is protected almost by all means necessary. We do everything to protect those moments that happen for your child when they're deeply engaged in material like that. We don't want to mess with that at all. So with that kind of experience, when they start as a young child, getting older and older, when they have that sense of concentration protected, they know how to concentrate deeply. It becomes something that's just woven into their experience, right? So that's just an image that you could see of what one of the benefits is that you'll see in Montessori primary classrooms. Now, another benefit that happens in this third year is you'll see everything starts to come together. The work, when they begin as a 3-year-old or a 2.5-year-old, or even as a 4-year-old, or when they're beginning, they might begin in their kindergarten year. What you see is all the lessons that they have and that they are receiving begin to blend together. Things start to make sense, right? And Braden might be able to talk a little bit about how beautifully designed the materials are to fit each other. like in this picture, you'll see two different materials that the child probably spontaneously figured out. Hold up, these match, these work together, and they bring those two materials together, right? Braden, do you feel like you've seen that over and over again in your experience in the classroom?
Absolutely. The way the materials are designed, every child spontaneously has the same kind of discovery that there's parallels across the materials, and that we are just kind of observing and waiting for the children to have their own discovery as they're engaging with the materials. So yeah, we see that a lot, and that's a sign that they're building towards abstraction by building the materials in their minds and being able to find parallels outside of what's exactly in front of them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a perfect example, and it's almost it's a joy to see that that discovery happen, because we often are not a part of that discovery. We're sitting back and observing and giving them space to make that discovery. And you'll see a child's eyes light up, and they look over here, and they look over here, and they put it together. Hold up, I can put these together and watch what I can do. And this is a photograph of just this thing that happened. And take a look at him scooting back, observing his masterpiece, right?
Yeah, and just another little quick example, Amy. So once children are a little bit older and they're, in their kindergarten year, and they've been working with the movable alphabet, another kind of engineered discovery that we build in with the materials for the children is the movable alphabet. So the idea is that they're building words, and the idea within the Montessori context, they're building words necessarily before they even can read them back. So they're taking what's in their mind and they're encoding those ideas in written word on the movable alphabet. Like if you looked at today's e-news, you saw a kid front and center who had a rug full of words that they had built on the rug. And so that through lots of work and repetition with this material, children are building words, they're building words, they're building words. They're also learning the sounds of the letters as they're constructing them. And then all of a sudden one day they look down at their rug and they're like, wait a second, I know this sound, I know this sound, I know this sound. If I say, there's like, this is D, this is a D, this is an ah, this is a g, this is dog, this says dog. And all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and they're like, wait a second, I can read. And it's like the materials are designed so that every child can potentially have this experience and this like Einstein moment of discovery. And they're like, I learned how to read. And that's like a thing that a lot of children say. And the adults are kind of just observing and just kind of like giving them space so that they have that experience through lots of repetition, that everyone kind of has an opportunity to arrive at their own discovery point. Then all of a sudden they can read. And so that's just another example.
And what's so cool is that the adult doesn't steal that from them. It is their discovery, and they can read, not I taught you to read, but they discovered how to read through their own repetition and through their own work, which I think is such an incredible way to respect the child's process, and let their discovery be theirs and not ours, right? Okay, so let's talk about, as they're reaching this final year in primary, sometimes their feet are in two lanes at one time, right? So as the primary lessons for kindergartners have one foot in primary, where they're more involved in parallel play, and you've probably seen this with your child during play dates or as they're doing something with you, it's more parallel. They're focused on something, and the child maybe next to them is focused on something, but they're not necessarily doing something together, right? They begin in this final year primary to look toward their peers and notice the connections that they have with other peers in their classroom environment, right? So they look for more opportunities to collaborate and to do things together. So in this picture, you'll see two children have figured out that they want to do this work together. So there they are working on probably two different parts of it that will come together to form the whole lesson experience, right? So other materials that you might see that is the golden bead games that teach addition and subtraction, etc. in the language area, the lesson about the function of words, the function of words games, where they begin to practice coming together. And Braden, if you want to talk a little bit about that, short about the function of words games, because I love that lesson. It's incredible.
Yeah, so these are introductory kind of games that the children play to learn the way that our words work in our language. And so a game that these games that are geared for children on the older end, that kindergarten year in the primary, it gives them these really structured ways to interact in a kind of group setting. And so the idea that I was thinking of in my head, the classic example is the command game, the like verb command game. And so children learn that verbs are action words. And if you tell someone a verb, that can be like a command, like walk to the door or pat your head. And that's so when the children come together, that is, they are delighted that they can give their friends an order, and that, or a command, I should say, and then they get to act it out. And then they take turns kind of giving each other cues. And then they're like exploring, like, well, what other verbs can we use? Sing a song, sit on the chair, carry the chair, walk to the door, touch the carpet, all these kinds of things. And then it's just this game of like, what verbs can I think of next? And so they kind of take turns back and forth, giving each other commands in this kind of really structured and simple way that's building towards the more complicated collaborative work that they do in the elementary.
Right. And it's also practice for, as they're giving those commands or making requests of their friends, that they're practicing being a leader. They're practicing saying something and others do, right? So that's the beginning of, hold up, I can do this, and then they could do to me. So I can lead and they can lead. So it's practice in taking turns and being in a place of following and listening to directions and also giving directions. They're also given some guidance, if necessary, on how to do that in a way that's respectful, right? Please walk to the door. Please tell me a joke, right? So there are graces and courtesies that are woven into that as well, so that they're learning to be kind and compassionate leaders and not leaders who just tell you what to do, right? And it's precious to see the transformation happen when they say, walk to the door, and then they remember, oh, please walk to the door. So it's a shift in their learning of how to be a leader that's not a jerk, right? More of those in the world, right? Okay, so as we move forward, we can think about in this final year of primary, teachers by this point really know the children really well. For children who have started earlier at 2.5 or 3, the teachers know their strengths. They know their temperament. The classroom teams know the child really well. They know that they love and know everything about dinosaurs, or that's my person who can help me find just the right book on such and such, right? So teachers know the strengths and they know the struggles of that child really well, and they can think forward to what lessons can I provide? How can I adjust the environment to help teach into that skill where a child might still be struggling or having a challenge, right? At this point in that last year, the children really know their friends well. They know all their classmates. They know who to go to help tie an apron. They know who to go to help them sweep up a mess or to play soccer with on the playground. It almost becomes some sibling relationships where they're fiercely friends, and then they also learn how to have conflict with each other. It's like, we've known each other 3 years and you're really getting on my nerves again. Okay, so how do we have conflict with each other? Right? So those are lessons that carry on throughout their experience, but you'll see more and more of that as children are turning more to their peers and are figuring out how to negotiate conflict, how to resolve peacefully, and figure out, okay, well, you keep that work for 5 minutes and I'll set the timer and then I'll have a turn. And that kind of resolution is another point of discovery where we coach children from the sidelines, but allow that struggle to happen and for them to discover okay, how are we going to figure this out? We're going to figure this out. So let's go get the peace rose, or let's go get Gypsy Belle to help with this because she's a great conflict negotiator, right? So they may go to an elder child in the classroom who can come and help with ideas. So that's kind of cool to see, right? As your child stays in through the full spectrum, all the years in primary, the teachers know them, they know the teachers, they know their classmates really well. And if they do go to another school, it could be that they spend time figuring out how does school work now? This feels really different than what I was before. Wait, I have to wait to go to the bathroom, or I have to wait to finish this lesson before I do something else. You know, what is this worksheet, right? Where are my hands-on materials? When I'm finished with something, I'm finished and I can put it away and go to my next interest as I wish, as I feel led, as I feel inspired. So sometimes we've heard from families who have made the shift to a different kind of environment, say that a big chunk of the year is just figuring out how to get into the new approach, into the different approach, right? So that's something to be mindful of. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, stories are always good. I'd like to tell you a story about Anne, and I'm not sure, is Kurt here yet? I wasn't sure if Kurt was going to come. Kurt is our guide in Cloud Classroom. He happens to be the father of Anne. And here Anne is, you know, the orange arrow, that's her. And Anne started when she was 3 years old, the same year that Kurt started at the school. And she came with her beautiful dresses every single day. Her mom sewed incredible dresses. And that's just kind of how I remember her. Small, quiet, absorbing everything, tentative, would receive lessons here and there, but keenly observant of everything around her, right? As she got older and received more and more and more lessons and got some experience under her belt, and she was she was growing right before our eyes. In the final year, I can remember seeing her on the playground. She was the one who, if there was a child who fell down and skinned their knee or something, she was the one who would run over and put her arm around them, or go get a teacher and get an ice sponge, or go get a Band-Aid or a tissue. So I saw that heart of hers grow by leaps and bounds, right? She was the one who, if there was a spill, she jumped up like a meerkat because she knew I must go help that. And so she would leap in to help somebody clean up a spill, right? So that was her emerging as a leader and practicing that leadership and that heart-centered leadership that she kind of grew into. And now she's grown and she's in college now, and she has become a young woman with a kind heart who is incredibly self-directed and confident in a way that when she first started at 3, we had no idea of the confidence that would emerge, the self-directed choices that she would make, and her kind heart. So, and I think she's going to be going into, what is she? I forget what is she going into social work or nursing? I can't remember exactly, but.
Whatever it is, she chose it.
That is, exactly. That's for sure. Nobody tells her what to do. All right. Let's see, let's go on to another benefit of the individual. And by the way, if y'all have any questions and you want to raise your hand at any time, please do that. Or we're a small group, so if you want to just turn on your mic and wait for a pause, go ahead and do that, okay? Okay, but here we are, let's carry on. Another benefit, as we're going down the list, is this idea of the respect for the individual, right? So when children are in our Montessori environments, you can bet that there are plenty of adults around here whose purpose, whose direction, and we're all in the same direction, is of deep respect for the child, right? We're equally concerned about intellectual, social, and emotional development. And it's almost as if you know, the academic piece, you know, understanding all the countries in South America and knowing all the flags to the countries in Asia and knowing how to spell and, oh my gosh, I could read. All that comes as sort of a happy accident because so much emphasis is put on creating a space where children feel at peace, feel that people around them are kind, and that they are respected for who they are at any given moment, right? So Montessori consciously teaches children about how to be kind and how to be peaceful, how to respect others and respect themselves. Our goal is to help students, help them develop who they really are, right? How I love dinosaurs. I can find out as much about dinosaurs as I want. That is my deep interest. So the guide and the classroom team supports that interest flourishing, right? How can we make language cards about the dinosaurs? What about painting? Can we paint this type of dinosaur? What about where did these different types of dinosaurs live once long ago, like, right? Another goal of Montessori is that they understand deeply their work. What is this concept, and do I have a full understanding of this concept? And Brandon, you might be able to tap into this too, about the design of the work as a self-correcting, right? So they don't need an adult to come behind them and no, that's not how you do it. This is how you do it, right? The way that the materials are designed is there's one way that the knob cylinders go in, right? You might end up and you just have one at the end, and the child can naturally discover which one doesn't fit, and they make the shifts and changes so that it's together at the end in one way. So that's kind of an interesting, something that I love about the design of the materials is their self-correcting element, right? So through that self-correction, you will probably notice that the experiences and the materials that are available to them are hands-on. So the children are learning about the world through their hands, right? The materials are designed to invite them to put their hands on, right? So you'll notice at the beginning of the year, the guide is giving lesson after lesson after lesson after lesson so that children can get their hands on the materials and start discovering and exploring as long as they wish. So some child might get a lesson on, say, the binomial cube, and they do it and take it apart, and they do it and take it apart, and do it again if they want and take it apart. Go have a snack, come back and do it again as many times as they wish, right? So through that repetition, they get a full, deep understanding of what the concept is in that particular work, right? All right. You want to add anything there, Brandon? Want me to press on?
Yeah, just real quickly, I'll just say then for the kindergarten year, that's kind of where all these things come together, and that they've had more than a year in this space with all this kind of individualized work, that this is the kindergarten year is kind of an opportunity for all these things to come together, and you kind of see the results of all that self-correcting work and individualized time and kind of personal development as they've been engaging with other children in the classroom. So that's just kind of one thing to think about as we kind of move on to the next slide.
Yeah, perfect segue, because the third year students may indeed start the year by walking around the room, picking work independently, but somewhat impulsively, right? You'll see that in the very beginning when first year students, everything is so beautiful and they want to do everything. And it can be so hard to hear, oh, you need a lesson on that. And guaranteed there will be an elder child in the classroom who will tell that 3-year-old, you can't do that because you haven't had a lesson on that, right? Guaranteed, right? So they monitor who's had lessons on what, right? And third year students, they start the year looking around, what have they not had a lesson on, right? What are they interested in? And then the guide comes alongside and starts to kind of foster, fan the flame of what is it that they're interested in, right? And help them make some choices as necessary, as needed, right? So over time, in this third year especially, the guide tends to work with the older students on bigger, more ambitious work. And there's a picture here, that long bead chain, which comes along, certainly not in the first year or the second year, but this is, what do you think, a third year work, Braden, would you say? Maybe second year?
I would say Yeah, I would say because it's not the 10 chain, it's probably a third year work. And
Mhm.
then the fun thing about this photo is this is actually taken from the elementary space. And so this is a material that children first learn in the primary in their kindergarten year. This is the chain of 8, I think, and it looks like the cube of 8. And so it's a counting exercise when they first engage with this, but when they return to it in the elementary, it's an learning their like refining their multiplication tables for like the factors of 8, but then also getting into exponents and powers of numbers. And they just kind of build on all those math concepts that all start with this one material that they start in the primary.
Right. And they start with it in their hands. So imagine all of y'all, including myself, who didn't go to Montessori school when we were little kids. When did we start learning about multiplication? What? Second, third grade? Yeah. And that learning for me was memorizing. The teacher would call out 2 times 8, and I would say the answer. 3 times 8, I would say the answer. You know what I did? I counted 8. And while she said 2 times 8, I was going 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right? Anybody else do that? Okay, so full confession here. So these children are actually feeling, what does 8 feel like, right? So there's a kinesthetic experience of the number 8 and a physical experience of lining up all of these 8s to make 80. How many chunks of 8, how many bars of 8 are there? Oh, 10, right? So 10 8s equal 80. 10 times 8 equals, right? So, whoa, mind blown. So check it out. This is a material that, yes, they get it in the primary, but it also exists in elementary so that when children are first starting elementary, there's a sense of familiarity. There's a bridge from one program to the other. So they'll see materials. They're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, I'm gonna go do that again because I'm still learning about everything in this classroom. But there's the bridge of familiarity. Like sometimes they might go to a primary classroom and borrow the chains to bring it up, right? So still the connection with their friends, if when they move up to elementary, they could still go and, you know, check in with the Swifts and borrow the 8 chain or borrow some milk, because we're one community and we all know each other, right? Let's see. Oh, the last bit is the multi-step goals to the work. In Montessori schools, children are able to leave their work out. If it becomes dismissal time and they're in the middle of this 8 chain, they could leave it out. I mean, our housekeepers know when work is out on the floor, then they just vacuum around it, thankfully. So they're aware of, okay, when something's out, I'm just gonna leave it be and tend around, right? And that's out of respect for their work. We leave work at work, right? Hopefully, and come back to it the next day. Do we have to finish everything at the end of each day? No. So they're able to come back right where they left off with their work left exactly as they left it. Okay, so here's another story time for you guys. So this is Eva. Eva started with us. Did I already talk about Eva? No, I didn't. It was Anne. Okay. So Eva started with us, and she actually started her journey at TPMS in her elementary year. I'm almost certain she had elementary primary, Montessori primary, and moved to Portland and joined our community in elementary. So she already had that capstone year where she had practice being a leader. She had practice in developing her sense of concentration. She had practice in learning how to be kind and compassionate to her friends, how to help out, how to put things back, how to lead a small group of young children, right? So she's had that experience in her capstone year before. In elementary, what flourished was her ability to, her level of maturity and her confidence and her self-possessed nature, right? So this was a young woman who it was a while ago. So do you remember Michelle Obama's from way back when there was choreography and she was getting everybody to move and get fit? Well, she heard about that. So this is our elementary students looking out into the community, hearing something and bringing it back into the classroom. And it was almost like y'all, check this out. I want to learn this. Let's learn it. And we'll do a show, we'll do a performance. And so I was so lucky to be invited to come in and help with the choreography and learn the choreography. So this kind of looking out into the community is the natural next step from looking from their own work to their community of peers in their classroom. So what follows after the looking at their peers in their classroom is the looking outward into the community. And then beyond that, looking out into the world. So it's the natural progression of human tendencies, right? So Eva brought that along with her confidence and leading during going outs. And now she works with us. So you may have seen her at school. She's a program assistant, and she's in school right now on her way to become a Montessori elementary guide. And will tell you, and has told us, that the reason she wants to do that is because of her experience in our school, and she couldn't imagine teaching any other way, right? So that's Eva. Okay, so let's press on to other benefits. From walking to leaping, right? So in the third year primary, a typical Montessori preschooler achieves cognitive growth that goes far beyond what we would expect. And if we had grades, formal grades, far beyond what you would expect at each grade level, right? So as impressive as all that academic stuff is, the most important benefit lies elsewhere. And I touched on that just a few minutes ago. I wonder if you remember. Okay, so that skill of leadership. So as the third years become third years, they're given a level of responsibility that maybe they hadn't had before, because they were still gathering the tools and skilling up, if you will, to be that leader, that kind, compassionate, clear leader, the one that says, please walk to the door, right? So they might be given the job to welcome new friends into the class. Or if there's a new child who comes in, they might give them a tour of the classroom, of where to find this. Here's where you get snack. Let's have snack together. So they act as role models to our younger students on how to have snack. How's the bathroom work? How do you ask them to go to the bathroom? Or where do you stand? Or where do you put your stuff in your cubby, right? Beyond those simple process things, the older children may spontaneously read to a smaller group of classmates, right? You'll see them step into the role that they've seen their guide or the classroom assistant step into, and they'll notice, oh, okay, that's how Miss Renee calls 2 or 3 children over to read a book. Okay, and you'll notice that elder in our primary classroom call a few students over to a rug and we'll spontaneously read a book, right? And that always gets us all in our hearts when we see that happen. And it happens a lot, right, Braden? So that kind of reading a book to a smaller group, or spontaneously helping when they see a child struggling, right? If they're having a hard time zip their zipper on their coat, they might spontaneously help, or are easily cued. If a child asks, say, for example, a child asked me to help zip their zipper, I might turn and say, I think Benson knows how to do that. You want to give it a go? And then the older friend will help zip the zipper, right? They're often the ones who take the initiative to tidy up or water the plants when they have limp leaves. Remember Anne and the meerkat? Oh my gosh, I heard something spill. I must run and help. Yeah, that happens. So my last story for you tonight is about Nicholas. Again, another child who started with us when he was 3 and small, and not necessarily quiet and tentative, but he came in full of energy. He was excited to be there. He was happy to be on this planet, smiles from ear to ear all the time. And during his time in our community, his whole family is in our community. His mom was an avid volunteer, was in helping out in lots of different ways and in lots of different committees throughout her time there with us. But there was a period of time when she got really sick. And as fierce and as a beast that Nicholas was on the playground, I mean, he was a competitive, he loved to play baseball, and he was incredibly physical. So was his mom. So as his mom was sick, the community came around, right, and supported this family in lots of different ways. And through that, we saw Nicholas lean into his friends, right? So his friends were able to see him be the leader and help them out. And when he needed help, his community came around and helped him too, right? So as he was outside teaching kids how to play soccer or teaching them how to swing a bat on a t-ball stand, other students were able to come around him and help him when he was not at his full self, when he was feeling really, really sad. He had a community of children around him that came and supported him. So talk about community stepping in to support each other. That was a period of time that I'll never forget because of the beauty and kindness that happened in that, particularly in that classroom community, right? And he's gone on, he went through our elementary program and now he's in college and he's this incredibly talented baseball player and is a leader on his baseball team. According to him, he's a kind leader. I know he's incredibly competitive, so I'm curious about how kind he is, but I'm sure he's kind and incredibly funny. So every now and then you'll see we've got a picture of all of our alumni. There are some more others that I cropped out just for space, but there's a crew that comes back again and again and again. And we hear all kinds of things like, oh, wait, what? You jumped the fence when you were in high school? Yeah, don't do that. But it's their place where they feel really comfortable and it feels like home. Okay. So this piece I'd love to share with you is about character. And this is a bit from the Wall Street Journal. If you guys read Wall Street Journal, maybe you've seen this at some time, but it talks specifically about the Montessori classroom. And the quote goes like this: what matters most in a child's development is not how much information we can stuff into their brain in the first few years of life, but what matters instead is whether we are able to help them develop a very different set of qualities, a list that includes persistence, self-control, curiosity, conscientiousness, grit, and self-confidence, right? So earlier we talked about the academics as kind of a happy accident after the idea of creating a space where they can build their own character and build a depth of self-control and build a practice of persistence, right? So that's definitely what you'll see in all the years, but specifically in the third year, you'll see those skills skyrocket, right? They're growing and growing and growing, right? Am I right, Braden? Like you can see it just take a, it goes way up and then everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're ready for elementary. It's really cool when we see that happen. And you'll notice here the picture of, she came alongside to help him out. I think he was really struggling with the materials that he had there, if I remember the context of this picture correctly. Yeah, so she's helping him out. She's had that lesson. She's like, I got you. I'll help you out. All right, let's see. And beyond that, remember we were talking about Eva and the idea of moving from self to classroom to community and beyond. The third year children are beginning to have an understanding what impact they have on the world in a small space of their classroom. So when they see that the plant needs help, the plant needs to be dusted, there's a lesson for that, and they could do that. They know how to think, how is this plant important to me and to the world? So woven into the classroom experience itself, children are able to study their place in the larger world. They're able to understand geography and what do people do in that part of the world? What plants grow in South America, or what plants grow in here or there? What do they eat? How do they do their hair? What do they wear? What dances do they do? What kind of music do they look like? So they're beginning from this exposure and experience, they're able to have a growing understanding of the differences of other people and a curiosity to find out more. So that's another thing that seems to skyrocket in that third year as well, that curiosity to find out more about, well, what do other people do in this area? Or, well, tell me more about this. And that interest that curiosity begins to spin, and they want to learn more and more and more about others and how they are connected to others. So, okay, so what's next, right? Here's what you can anticipate after this third year happens. And there we begin to realize, okay, it's about time for Abby to go into the elementary classroom because we start seeing this. And here's just a list. It's a bunch of stuff, but check it out. You may start to notice this when your child begin around 5.5, 6, going into 7. But you'll notice that interest, the big interest in big work. They're having a huge growth in their potential for intellectual. They want to know more. They want to know more. They want to do work that is big and that is real. They want to plan a menu for snack for the whole week. They want to create a shopping list and set a budget and actually go to the grocery store and come home, come back and fix it, right? Which happens every week in our elementary classroom. You'll notice that there's a relative calm and stability in some ways, right? Children are figuring out how to self-regulate. They've had lots of practice in self-regulation. They're growing in maturity. They're growing in their ability to practice. I still have this big emotion. I'm still freaking out, but I know what to do. And I have friends who can help me. Take a deep breath if I need to. Go get some water if I need to, right? So the calm, stable nature tends to come more frequently and with greater duration as a child grows in maturity, right? You'll notice that the round, sweet, chubby, baby-like face begins to slim up, like their head becomes separate from, like they actually grow a neck. Have you noticed? Like their head is separate from their bodies, right? They tend to move differently, not from just the belly forward, but their full body comes in alignment as they move forward. Right? Start to lose their teeth. It's almost a universal, like, oh, okay, they're losing their teeth. They're ready for big work, right? They tend to be more robust and tend to get sick less. They're ready to move from concrete to more abstract thinking. So they're holding on to that abstract thought Braden was talking about earlier, like, oh, I can put those two things together and then execute the putting the things together, right? They use their imagination more. They're really interested in internal order versus external order, right? So that's why if you walk down the hallways of our classroom, you'll see that our elementary students' cubbies look like an explosions happen because they're interested in internal order, and that external order that was much more of a part of their world in primary just kind of goes out the window. No, it doesn't. It goes internal, right? They tend to be more adventurous. They want to go on big adventures. They have the endurance to go on a bigger hike and a bigger experience out in the world. There's the idea of the herd instinct, and this kind of goes along with their interest in other people and their community, and where they turn to their friends more than they turn to the adult. Right? So they are much more interested to have a play date with their friend than to play with you. So get ready for that. And their sense of justice becomes deeply rooted. Braden, how many conversations have you had about that's not fair? That's not fair. Right? We hear that a lot. Okay, well, what's the difference between fair and equal? We talk about what is just, how are we going to do? So lots of those kinds of conversations begin to emerge because a child in that second plane into that elementary is fiercely dedicated to the sense of justice and what is right and what is wrong. And they're practicing and figuring out all of those nuances that some of us are still learning, right? What's right, what's wrong? Okay. Any thoughts or questions before we have a couple of quotes of what some families have said? Anything so far? Okay. Well, here's a bit of what one family has said. So they talk about the social piece for this family in particular. The social piece is so important. These relationships grow along with the children. The expectations for each child are higher than outside the school community. We know the children and expect them to do great work because they can. My children knew how to work upon entering public school and grade school. They knew how to order over their thoughts and focus and complete a task. We want our children to stay and be strong, and to be strong and sticking it out through the third year rather than half strong. So that's what one family said. Another family said, it's like an onion with more and more layers. As he gained more skills, he could go deeper into his skills. The mastery was so impressive. He was strong in math and was allowed to go as far as his interest led him. And this led him to new levels of math and exploration. His confidence, he can go and talk in front of people in a way that I could not do until much later. It's not even an issue for him. Yeah, that confidence, that's fun. What other families said, here's a few more. Some families noticed, okay, my child moved from sewing burlap to sewing an entire map of the world. I remember this map, right? It was so complicated and actually so incredibly beautiful at the end because so much time and so much interest was in that work. And the time was allowed, was given, the materials were provided. And that experience in concentrating and being able to dive into something that you're super interested in, that was allowed to happen. And that happened in the third year. The next one, he had taken things he manipulated with his hands and built them in his mind to use over and over again. He said how he could see the beads in his mind for each math problem. He's an engineer now. Wow. Another family said the goal for that year was to work on motivation for using the skills he acquired, not just academic, but more importantly, as a human being. All right. So, but what after the kindergarten year? What are we going to do after the kindergarten year, right? Won't they miss out? If I don't start my child in the kindergarten year at the elementary school, they'll miss out on being with their group of peers, right? Well, public school is free. But so there are lots of reasons that you may be considering, like, okay, I want to make a shift, I want to make a move so that we don't miss out, or so that, you know, public school is free. So I'm curious to hear, are there other thoughts or feelings that you may have that are different from these? These are two that we, Braden, you may be able to speak to this, or that these two thoughts or questions that you get most frequently about staying for the third year?
Yeah, I mean, the one I get a lot is that community piece, that families are concerned about, you know, having friends in the neighborhood and going to the school where the kids they play with after school, like going to the same school program as them. Right. But I think that it's interesting. That's one that I hear a lot, but I think you also were able to share that story about Nicholas, that, you know, his family went through a real thing and the community was there to kind of support the child and the family in a way that, you know, could have happened in public school, but it maybe would have looked different. So yeah, I mean, there's 1,000 reasons we could think of why one could go to public school and why that might be a good choice. But there's also a ton of reasons for sticking it out to have that full kind of capstone experience in the Montessori primary classroom.
Right. Well, that goes right into this next quote from a family about, you know, if I could go back and do it again, what would you say? And this family said, what I would do differently is I would go back and I would have been working harder at this point in the year to convince other parents to stay. So, and I don't know if you remember who this family or what their circumstance was, but I know some families have gone to other places and they call at about a month or a month and a half into the school year. And they're like, Braden, is there a spot? Can we come back? Because they see that there's a difference, right? And they may come to an understanding that, wow, I think we're missing something here, right? So one of the last things I want us to, before we break into all the big questions and answers that you might, questions that you have and answers that we'll try to give, is of course we have a Montessori quote here, right? So Dr. Montessori said, the greatest development is achieved during the first years of life, and therefore it is then that the greatest care should be taken. If this is done, then the child does not become a burden. He will reveal himself as the greatest marvel of nature. And in true Dr. Montessori style, it is a grand Epic declaration. Yeah, it's kind of full. There's a lot in here, right? It's the way home where you have to think about it on the way home. Right. Okay. So let's see. The final year of primary absolutely is the capstone of your child's experience. So the work that they're doing builds upon each other into that final year where you can put a cap on it, right? So that piece is where you'll see more of this. You see the child here reading to a group of young ones. And do you notice that he has the teacher's stool? So clearly, yeah, he saw his teacher or the guide in the classroom use this stool to tell stories or to give a lesson. And so he went to get the stool himself. There he was. Okay, so now we are ready for all your questions. Any questions that you have for us at this point? I feel like I've been talking a lot. What do y'all have to say?
Hey, Amy and Braden, it's Ken.
Oh, hi, Ken.
Hey.
Oh, you saw your kids, huh? You saw your kids'
I
picture?
did. Yeah, it was very sweet. I didn't really have a question, and I don't mean to come on here and be a shill for you all, but with our guys in their kindergarten year right now, we've seen just in sort of the first 2 months of this year, like these sort of major leaps, and it's just kind of gratifying to actually see you sort of codify it here in this way, because we've definitely noticed it anecdotally, and to sort of know that it's kind of like part of the plan is really encouraging. So I just wanted to add that anyway.
Yeah. You know, Ken, thanks for bringing that up, because families that I've known in your very similar situation go into that third year like,
Well,
really?
it's weird because
Really?
we actually, the funny thing is, we obviously had the opportunity to move them to public school for this year, but they're pretty young for their age, and we thought, well, maybe we'll just kind of like, they seemed a little too young in our like a little sort of immature in our minds to put them in public just yet. And I mean, obviously it's just like, we know we made the right choice by keeping them at TPMS, but yeah, it's weird. Like, we actually thought maybe we were, I don't know how to articulate it. We were holding them back thinking they weren't ready for something, when in fact, like, it seems like they're actually advancing really quickly in this third year.
Yeah. It's wild how it happens, because it's a sharp upwards trajectory.
It is, yeah.
And
For
that's
sure.
a progression of development. Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
I'm glad you're here. I was choosing the photos and I was wondering if you were going to come tonight. I thought, oh, you'll see his picture.
Yeah, it was very sweet. He actually came in the room really quickly and saw it too.
Did he?
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or thoughts?
I just had a quick thought, and that is, Ken, thank you again for sharing that. I like the one interesting thing about the kindergarten year is that it's a point of arrival for children coming through the primary and having that capstone experience to really kind of consolidate their time. And I sometimes I refer to it as like the victory lap, is that they are, they know how to do everything in the classroom, and then they kind of all of a sudden realize they have these other kids and that are in the classroom that kind of their peers kind of become the materials that they work with in this kindergarten year. So it's this like point of arrival and leadership for them. But then it's also simultaneously this point of departure, is that it's kind of opening the door to that work that happens in the elementary, which is all done in a group setting, and the academic work is held kind of in equal value with that social emotional kind of group work that children learn how to navigate conflict and all that. So it's this really interesting point of like inflection, that they're consolidating and kind of putting all the tools in their toolbox, and then they're setting off down the road in elementary and taking their toolbox with them to kind of use all the things that they've learned in all these new kind of exploratory ways. So I think kindergarten, it's such a fascinating year, and you can really see it. I mean, kids start getting tall, they get skinny, their hair gets crazy.
You start falling out. Yeah.
Exactly, just like you said. And it's just really cool, because all those external things are happening. That all this is happening internally as well, and you see it in the work they do. So it's a fascinating time.
All right. Well, now's the time if you have any final thoughts. I definitely want to thank everybody for being here. I know it's a hard time to be here in the evening, but we notice that and recognize that, and thank you all for being here. Certainly, if you want to stick around, I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes after. I know if you need to go and finish up with bedtime or bath time or whatever it is that you're doing at your house. I totally understand that. And if you'd like to stick around and share any final thoughts or have any final questions, I'm happy to be here too. All right. Looks like our folks are starting to step out. So again, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now. So let's see, where is it? There we go.